Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I will take this one off. There we go. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started shortly. Thanks so much for joining today. Today is as we mentioned in the overall schedule, I will share the link to the schedule again, but today we're going to be learning about our classroom transition. So we're going to hear from Avni, our Senior Director of Education at GitHub. She's going to talk a little bit about the tools that we're transitioning to, our approach behind the transition and the sunset, and a little bit of the timeline. Shared that schedule there so you can see when we're going to hear from our two transition partners, Codio and 50 Foundation, later today. We're super excited to hear from them. You'll get a demo and some opportunities to ask them some questions as well. If you joined us yesterday, or if you didn't join us yesterday was awesome. Once again, we have recorded everything and we'll be sharing those out. But what I do have available right now are a bunch of really great resource links from everything that was shared yesterday, basically. So we pulled together all of the links to various things that folks were talking about, mentioning, including talks from Jeffrey, Leo, and Corey, their websites and their talks. We heard from Swift from Major League Hacking, so I have some links there from his presentation. And then we also have some great CLI videos that Ari shared towards the end of the day. And we got more into some AI agentic workflow work. So that's a really great resource to also bookmark there. We will be adding to those links over yesterday, today, tomorrow, yesterday, 2 days ago, yesterday, and today. We'll be adding more links in case there are any other links that those folks want to share. Our presenters today, Codio and 50 Foundation, they'll also have some resource links that will be included in that resource kit after the fact. I'll also make sure to add them in the teacher toolbox there. So that's for today. You have the links to the schedule as well as the resources from yesterday. I will now hand it over to Avni, who's going to introduce us for the day, level set and give us a little bit of an idea of who we're going to be seeing later on today, and also some of GitHub Education's approach to the transition. So I'm going to mute myself, and Avni's going to join us.
I turn my audio on. Okay. Hi, all. Can you all hear me? Just if someone could give a thumbs up, I'd appreciate that. Okay, maybe. Oh, yay. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Awesome. So thank you all. Thank you, Morgan, for the intro, and thank you all for joining us for our final day of the GitHub Educator Summit. We hope that you've been able to follow along as, we've had discussions varying from talking about just the idea of AI in education and what does that mean for curriculum, to the hands-on exercises with GitHub that PJ has done, with skills and agentic workflows that Ari shared, and then the conversations with Swift. So hope you all are enjoying this and finding it useful. And we are looking forward to your feedback so we can make the next one even more impactful. So for today's a big day. So last month, we shared plans to sunset GitHub Classroom. And we know that many educators around the world use Classroom to help with their curriculum and teach CS in the classroom and have it run smoothly. We, as you all know, Classroom hasn't had substantial updates over the last 18 months. And we wanted to find a way to make sure that educators were supported in the AI world. And we wanted to provide solutions that allowed us to continue to grow and update features and products as technology changes. So to do that, we want to make sure that we wanted to ensure, like during the transition, that you are supported in the change with the tooling that helps you and meets the needs going forward. So that's why with that announcement, we also shared 2 partner-supported solutions from Codio and 50 Foundation. And I'm very, very happy to have both be a part of today. Very excited to have both be a part of today. Codio is our industry partner, and for those looking or needing a more handheld solution, a guided solution, I think they have an excellent workflow to help you with that transition and also take you forward in terms of offering learning content and learning modules. 50 Foundation is an open source solution built by David Malin of CS50 and his team. And we're excited to offer an open source platform and solution because that allows those who are able to roll up their sleeves, get into the weeds, augment the code base, and continue to develop the tools as technology changes. So excited to have both here today. And you can read the full announcement. I think Morgan's going to share the link. You can read the full announcement on our Classroom Sunset post. And just so that you all are aware, as of today, like no new users are accepted to Classroom, and existing users can use GitHub Classroom until August 28th. So that gives you a couple of months to transition off. And then Morgan's also going to share the two recommended partner solutions if she hasn't yet. Okay, perfect. And today's sessions give you a chance to learn about the partner solutions, try it out, walk through their tools, ask questions. We'll have open hours again at the end of today. So really excited for the path forward. I think this is the right way forward. We want to build something sustainable for the long term. So thank you all for being here again. And I know we're kicking off with Codio in the morning. I will have lunch, then we'll have 50 Foundation, then we'll have open hours. So I'm going to turn it back to Morgan to introduce Codio. Oh, I think there's a few. We still have a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I'll share. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Morgan.
Sure. Okay, so what's going to happen now is that Codio is going to join us at 10 o'clock. So Codio is not going to be here right this second, but Codio is going to join us at 10 o'clock. But what that gives you a little bit of time to do is to click on both of those two links from Codio and 50 Foundation and also take a look at the announcement and start to sort of click through a little bit of what they're up to so far, so that by the time they do arrive, you have some really good questions for them throughout the day. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. That was our introduction to sort of like what we're up to. But before we completely leave, I do want to know if anyone has any questions before we hear from Codio, who will be up first. I'm going to share the timeline again, actually, so you can see, so you just like can bookmark that. And then, yeah, we can take some questions as well, just kind of like as a lead up. There we go. So there's a timeline. So no new users will be accepted to Classroom. That was effective May 26th. And then existing users can continue to use through August 28th, which is actually my birthday. And then after that date, GitHub Classroom will be fully deprecated. So we're going to hang out a little bit to see if there's any questions about what was just shared. Okay. So Stephanie, did you catch the links at the top? You might not have, but I will reshare them. We have the resource links from the full day yesterday. So I'm going to reshare that. I'm going to, here we go. That has the link to both the consortium overall, and there's a link to join the Slack. If you go to their main website, there may be another way to follow along, but right now I think it's mainly the Slack. Check both of those links though, because there's a link to the main site. They have events as well, so you can kind of possibly get on their event list. And okay, you did. Okay, awesome. Okay, I would check in. There might be some sort of just like Slack. You might be able to get on a mailing list via the Slack. Yes, Todd, I know that. Yes, it was, I made it really fast and didn't put it under the right link, but you can still get to it. I'll be moving it after, but I didn't want to move it right now because I didn't want the link to change for someone that may have bookmarked it. Any other questions? Were any questions for Avni at all? She is still here, even though she's not on the screen. Yes, the recordings will be available next week. They'll be emailed and they'll also be added to the repo. If you go in there for the person who just asked for the Slack channel link, it's in this repo. And it's listed as Slack underneath the consortium bullet point. So if you scroll right back up, I just shared the link. In that link, that repo, there's this link to this consortium Slack channel. Is there a Slack? Do you mean for the, it's just for the, okay, yes, yeah, Nathan. It's just for the AI group that was presenting, that Leo presented on behalf of yesterday. That is what we're referring to for the Slack. So the AI consortium that Leo was representing yesterday, they have a Slack that you can join if you'd like to know more about their work and be more a part of that work.
There is the community discussions though for our verified educators.
There is a community discussions, an internal community discussions for verified educators. Avni is going to share the link. But yeah, we have more of a community forum as opposed to a Slack for all of our verified educators. We can add that link as well to the repo. Avni's working on it right now. Okay. Are you just someone that just answered? If you go to the repo, what are you seeing and where are you? Because if you go to day 2, underneath the consortium for for AI education, it does have a bullet point that just says Slack. It's underneath day 2, and then it says Consortium for Gen AI and CS Ed, Leo Porter's group, and then there's the link to the site and a link to the Slack.
just saw it this morning.
Thanks, PJ.
Oh, I see. The resources, you have a folder for the summit, that's scheduled. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Where can I find the community discussion link? Do you-
The next event. So the next event is just in about 15 minutes, if depending on where your time zone is. But the next event is in 15 minutes here. So you'll stay here. Codio is going to join us. I just wanted to leave some time open in case folks had questions about the any of the resources shared, anything that Avni's kind of shared with us this morning so far. Any questions about like our sunset process or things like that. Yeah, oh, there you go. And then there's a community discussion for verified educators. So if you got verified through us really recently, as opposed to, like, including kind of like if you just got verified this week, you'll get an invite for that, but you can also go there. Is the Slack channel the same as Microsoft Elevate for educators? Nope. That would be different. And the Slack that we shared is just for that AI consortium, and it's not GitHub official, it's not like a GitHub official thing. It is a separate consortium, but that's what Leo Porter was representing yesterday. Let's see if there's anything.
Getting an error, the invitations expired for the community discussion.
That happens sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna
We
send
can,
the
but
compiled-
yeah, we can get,
I'll send your resource.
you can get we can get you re-invited to that as well if
Okay.
for some reason I see somebody said they're getting an error. Okay, yeah, we can get you re-invite, or we can send the invite again. If you had already been verified like a while back, it might be expired, but we can send it again. We do have a question. I just want to say.
I'm just gonna, yeah. The teacher too. I think it's our main landing page.
This is some recorded. Yeah. That is a good point, Nancy. Avni, I'm not sure if you're in the chat here, but Nancy was saying with those that folks that have summer quarters, it doesn't give folks the break to figure out the sunset. We do realize that the timing may not be perfect. There was no perfect time to sunset. And we tried to do it when there was like as low of impact as possible, which was during the summer for a good majority of folks. But Avni, I'll mute as well if you wanted to say anything else about that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Nancy, for that question. That was our biggest concern. Like, I think if we had the ability to, we would have given teachers a year to do the sunset, but with like being able to onboard the partners, identify alternatives, and make sure that we are also I guess getting prepared for what's coming next. The 2 months was the 2.5 months, or is it made 3 months? I guess it is. Yeah, the 3 months was like the the maximum that we could work out. Unfortunately, I would have loved to give everyone like 18 months to digest the news and prepare the alternatives. So I know it's a little bit, it feels like a little bit like we're ripping the Band-Aid off. And that's why we are working very closely with the partners to try to onboard you, and get the transition to be as smooth as possible. Thanks for that question, though. If there's anything you can suggest we can do, like the timeline is like we can't change that, but if there's anything else that you would like and that you can that you feel like would be helpful, please let us know because we're here to help and try to make it as smooth as possible. Does Sharon need to be made? Okay, yeah. Yep, okay, gotcha. 70. We have people from around the world. There's people where I think it's like midnight for them right now. Thanks for that question, Nathan. Stephanie, I saw your question about the invitation being expired. We can resend the invitation to you for the community discussion. So I'll make a note of that. It's an action to follow up on. Thanks, Amy. Really appreciate your comment there. Do you understand? You asked Kelly's question. Is that so? Yes.
So that voucher is, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to be.
Turn my audio on. So the voucher that Ari shared is for a 50% discount on the Developing an AI Agentic Systems certification. The GitHub Copilot and Foundations voucher that I will share that will give you completely free use or free exam. It'll waive an exam fee for either of those. That is going to be that's a unique code that goes out to each individual, and that is something that I will share after you also do our survey. So what Ari shared yesterday, I'm seeing just a question about the voucher. That is, just trying to make sure that, yeah, that's the one. So yeah, that would be one that would give you 50% off of that, yeah, the developing an AI agentic. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. It's kind of fun seeing the training and interactive development. Yeah, Ari's, I mean, he wants to constantly update them to make sure that they're super relevant. Um, uh, and yeah, we want to make sure that they have everything that's the most up to date. Always iterating, yes, PJ. you. All right, so we're going to get started in about 5 minutes. I'm going to go off screen and just continue answering in the chat. And then when everyone is ready to go, again, we'll start in about 5 minutes at 10 o'clock on the dot, just in case folks are still joining us for exactly for that 10 o'clock time. I want to make sure that our presenters from Codio have time to test their screen share and all that stuff. So I'm going to go off of screen and off of the camera and off of audio. We'll still be answering anything that you ask in the chat, though. So feel free to keep asking questions if you run into any issues. And we will get started with Codio in about 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone. All right. I think, yeah, all the screens are shared. Everybody looks good. We can see everything. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. So I will hand it over to Codio, and we'll get started. We have about 1 minute left, but we can get started. Yeah, looks like everyone is good to go. I can see everyone's screens, and those are being shown. So y'all can get started, and we'll manage the chat and kind of bring forth any big questions that we may want to share with you. And then folks are also encouraged to just share in the Q&A if you have any specific questions for Codio about what they're talking about. Thanks, y'all.
Hello, everyone.
before we get started, can I just double check that we are seeing my screen? It says Codio on it and from GitHub Classroom, and everyone can hear me. Sharon, if you could give me a thank you. Okay. Not that like we have preferences on organizations or tech, but like Codio's a Zoom group, and we don't Teams. So this is thank you guys for helping us troubleshoot. But if we're ready to go, then great. So hi everyone, I'm Evan. We're welcome. Thank you for joining. We're going to show you today how Codio can help GitHub Classroom users move from repos to and starter code into a supported teaching workflow for coding assignments. That means with your existing materials or using our content, we're going to show you how you can leverage Codio to deliver, grade, give informative, helpful feedback, and support your learners, how all of that can be improved with Codio. So just very briefly about us, I'm joined by my colleagues, Patrick and Sharon. We're going to split this presentation among ourselves. I'm going to be framing the Codio workflow as relevant to GitHub Classroom users. So hopefully the group that's with us today, including importing your own content. Patrick is going to focus on our resource catalog and pedagogy, those sorts of things that are available to you as a Codio user. And Sharon is going to be showing the supports we have in the platform, both for student learning and for instructors. All three of us, we're all former computer science educators, as are pretty much everyone that works at Codio. And I'm hopeful that by the end of our demo, it's going to be clear that this platform has been built by computer science instructors for computer science instructors. So what is Codio? We are a supported teaching platform for coding assignments, environments, pre-configured environments, courseware, and assessment delivery. We're built for instructors who need reliability. I know very importantly, LMS integration, support, and visibility into how students are coding. So we're going to be demonstrating a lot of the insights into student coding that you can get inside of Codio, and that you can have all of these things in one platform, in one place. So for our demo, just like the big overview, yep, okay. We're going to be following the path that most educators actually follow when they adopt Codio. So we're going to start with your existing content and bringing it into Codio, how to turn it into teachable assignments that are auto-graded, how to support students while they work, and then close the loop with review and support, how grading and insights can be leveraged in the platform. While we're presenting, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Myself or my colleagues Sharon and Patrick will try to answer them as they come up, but we're also going to have, we think we'll have plenty of time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So you can save your questions until then, because we're going to cover a lot and answer a lot of your questions, I think, as we progress. But feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll have time for the Q&A at the end. Yeah, so getting started with bringing your existing content in. So let me switch my presentation over to my Codio screen. Okay, so in Codio, what we're looking at right now is a Codio dashboard. So, not unlike GitHub Classroom, you have all of your classrooms in one place that you can open. But here, I'll open this Python course, for example. You have access to all of your assignments and the student work associated with that assignment. So if I click on printing, we can see submissions from the students who are enrolled. This is goofy because it's test students. I'm not going to show actual student data here. But in more actions, we can sorry, I should choose a different one. We can open a student's project to see what state the project is in. If we change a coding assessment, we can rerun that assessment. We can run regrade, adjust deadline, extend time. So you have so many management controls from right here. And you also have very easily accessed insights into student learning. So if I select this assignment and I have access right here to behavior insights. So we can get so much information on what a student is doing inside of a Codio assignment, their debugging, insertions versus deletions, history of external pastes. And we can even step through and look at how they coded an assignment, characters inserted into delete and deleted, what they ran, what files they ran, what their score was, and when those actions happened, and then which code file they're coding inside of. So all of these things are readily available to you immediately. We're going to get a lot more into this. I just wanted to showcase this like sort of overview of where we're actually going to end up in this presentation. But first, we got to get there. So let's do a quick review of how to bring in your existing GitHub Classroom content. The easiest way to do this is if you are already signed into your GitHub account in this browser session. If I go to up here around new course, if I select import from GitHub Classroom, I've already done this, but it's going to take you through an approval process of improving the integration with your account. So after you've clicked through those windows and menus, it'll ask you which organization you want to import, select that, and then you're going to see your classrooms populate here as an option to import. So if I go to test classroom import, this is what's going to happen. You probably only have one organization if you're in Codio. So if you have more than one organization, you would select that here, but don't worry about that. I've got a lot. So I'll hit OK. And what's going to happen right now is it's going to create a new course. It's going to create a new assignment for every repo I have in that GitHub Classroom. 3 assignments, that's it. Each is its own containerized environment. Each is connected to the repo that it was originally connected to. So the Git remote connection is preserved. Standard Git commands work from the terminal. You'll have to connect your GitHub account to access those options, but we've already done that if you follow this import process. So I'm going to be showcasing this gradebook functions demo. So if I go from overview to edit assignments and open this in edit mode, I'm going to see my repo taken into this workspace. So all of the files I expected to be here are here. I have a gradebook file. I have a run test script. I have my unit testing script, and this is a Python assignment. And it's relatively straightforward. And well, we'll talk about the actual functions here, but if I open a terminal, I'm in the Codio workspace, and just to show, I can run git status to see what branch I'm on. If I run git, I can see the remote repositories, the GitHub connection points, and then I can even see history here as well. So you have all options are available here directly from the terminal. And just to show, if I run my testing script from here, I can see the output of running my unit testing script from the terminal. And this is going to work for me immediately because we've got Python installed in this workspace. So Codio workspaces are the environment, what we call stacks. Most of them are going to come with a version of Python already installed. This one has 3.10. But if you had, say, C++, if you had Java, if you have a specific compiler that you use, if you go up here to Project, Stack, Settings, you can select one of those environments to switch over to. And if you're using, say, a compiler other than GCC or one of the standard ones, for example, you could install that in this workspace. You can install anything you want and then save that environment to a stack. You would do that by create new, and then you can employ that tech stack to any assignments you want. So I just wanted to show that briefly, like what you have here inside this containerized space. So now I want to provide a brief intro to the auto grading experience for students in Codio. So back to this gradebook file. It's pretty straightforward. Students are implementing 3 functions: calculate average, I have some letter grade logic, and then pass-fail logic. At the bottom, just to showcase this a little more elegantly, I added a freeze code block. This is just going to make this code file runner, so I can put in some standard inputs, get some expected outputs in a command line program, so that Codio can do some pretty cool output testing and provide some clear feedback with that. Because we already have the unit test here, so that's great, but I did want to showcase some of the benefit to the student experience that you can get with Codio. So in just a few steps, we can really improve the student experience with this assignment. Because with a GitHub repo, all you can really do is provide instructions in the README. If I edit that README, I'm going to copy this text. So I've got this markdown text copied. In Codio, I'm going to create a guide. And the guide is what houses all of our instructional content. So this guides folder just got created. Anything new is going to be saved to the content folder in guides. If I add a new folder here called secure, I can put hidden tests there and they would be inaccessible to students. So I know that's a big issue with GitHub Classrooms, keeping tests hidden away from students. This secure folder is going to hold those testing scripts in an ephemeral container separate from the student's container. They cannot access them. So I just wanted to point that out. That's an excellent option if you want to have hidden tests. But I'm going to paste that markdown text from my README. And by default, the guide is going to look a little bit like that rendered markdown file, or the markdown README. So if I hit preview, this is what students are going to see on opening this assignment. But I can change their experience by going back to edit and modifying the layout. So right now it's just got one panel. I'm going to make it 2 panels. And I'm going to add the code file that learners need access to right here, that gradebook file. I'm going to put that in panel A. I could add other tabs or more panels, like a terminal or lots of other options. I'm going to try and keep it clean, though, for this presentation. So I'm just going to leave it at just that code file. Save and close settings. And now when I hit preview, students are going to see this when they open it. Got their instructions on the right, code file on the left. Now they can run these commands from the terminal to run those testing scripts, sure, but I can modify these commands very easily. Adding a try it button, just going to grab that command, put that command right there, and now I've turned that command into a button that's going to output directly into the guide. So I actually expect my unit testing script right now to fail 3 of the tests and pass half of them. It's just the way I set this up. And alternatively, if you wanted if you have like a wrapper script or something like that, it's even easier. So run script. I need braces, not, oh gosh, let me do that again. All right. And run that bash script. And now I can run my bash script, which is just a wrapper around that unit test that kind of makes it a little bit cleaner on the output for learners. So I can add these buttons, whatever run commands I want to add into the assignment. I can also add an advanced code test to actually deliver a grade to students so that when they submit this code test, it's going to give them 100%, 50%, however you want to allocate the points so that their assignment actually has a grade on submission. And I'm not going to set this up fully. I'm just going to showcase what options you have here. So in execution, you can run a custom language. So if you have a bash script, if whatever it is, you can run a custom script from here. But we also have a lot of testing frameworks built in, ready to go. So for Java, we have check style, we have JUnit. You can select your version of JUnit. For Python, we have PyCode style and unit test. So if I selected unit test, I could come over here, grab my test case, add it here, and I can add as many test cases as I want, create it, and it's ready to go, ready to deliver a score on student submission. So your existing scripts likely can just run as they are inside of Codio. And then if you have like a custom testing harness with a little bit of modification, it can be run inside of Codio via the custom. But I'm not going to do the advanced code test. Instead, I'm going to do a standard code test because I really want to highlight some of the really nice, rich feedback students can get. So if I create a standard code test, I'm going to name it standard code test for the purposes of the presentation so we know what it is. And I can say submit using the button below for grading. Instructions are pretty self-explanatory. They're already on the page. All I need to do is run that gradebook file. And actually, let me make a couple edits to this gradebook file. I want to add, not the unit test, the gradebook. So I'm actually going to make a couple corrections before I run this test. I want to make sure that everything is going to come back 100% correct before I add my solutions. So I return to guide editor. In grading, I have partial points, max score if I'm allowing multiple attempts. And then the usual, case insensitive, ignore white spaces, substring match. So if I add an item to check, my first test item is going to make sure that they calculate the average correctly. So run the test, it's going to produce the expected output. And for this one, like I said, I just want to check that it's calculating average correctly. So if I deleted that, it should actually probably fail the check test because I'm missing those outputs. But if I enable substring match, it should pass. Cool. So if I just want to check for that and then give targeted feedback based on that very specific output, it's very easy to do so. So my feedback can be, your average calculation's not right. Check that function and then give them a big hint. You likely need regular division instead of integer division. Okay. So that's good for that one. Let's add another item. And for this one, let's do the boundary cases. So if I run this test, I should have DCBA for these values. And if I delete that, I'll check the test. Again, this is for the boundary cases. Show error feedback. And if they don't get this, make sure you're checking the boundary cases. Usually means one or more comparisons are using that instead of that. Okay. And then one last item, I want to make sure that 59 returns failure. So I'll run the test with that. It should return false. And if not, score of less than 60 should have a letter grade F, and passing should be false. So this looks good to me. Now show expected answer is going to give me the output comparison. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to create this. I'm going to hit preview. And in my code file, I'm going to return it to its incorrect state and run my standard code test. Failed the first, and it's telling me exactly what it expects. Failed the second, and it's telling me exactly what it expects. Check 3 passed, though. Maybe I could have refined that check item a little bit more for this presentation, but that's okay. I think you guys get it. So if I wanted to change this so that the expected answer is never shown, I hit save, and now it doesn't tell me what the checks are. It just tells me that I failed or passed them, and if I failed, it's giving me that targeted feedback. So if I, for example, make some corrections, but not all, so this should pass the first and the third. Okay, so with just a few modifications, Codio can add a really rich layer to your teaching with targeted feedback, student supports built into that feedback, and just a more complete learning workflow so that when they're submitting this, it's all auto-graded. And like I said, your existing test scripts, your unit testing scripts, or a testing harness can likely run inside of Codio with no modifications or a little bit of modifications. And then if I hit publish, added guides and standard code test, I have full version control, version history. I can revert to a previous version, and this new publish, the most recently published state, that's the one that is going to be facing students when they open the assignment. So with this foundation in place, Patrick is going to show you, let me return to my slideshow for a moment. Patrick is going to show you what you can teach from once you're inside of Codio. So he's going to cover Codio's resource catalog, our pedagogical approach, and the tools that make Codio more than just a place that runs code. And Patrick, I have written in my speaker notes to smoothly transition screen share to you. So let's try and make that happen. Stop sharing. What do we do?
Is my screen showing? Should be the Codio. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Evan. Hi, my name is Patrick Esther. I'm the director.
And you're muted, Patrick. Maybe that's just me. Oh, I got a problem. I don't know what's going on with me. So much for a smooth transition. Thank you, everyone. Back to you, Patrick.
All right. Thank you, Evan. Okay. So my name is Patrick Esther. I'm the director of content at Codio, and I want to walk you through our course catalog and just our approach to how we present computer science education to students, and talk about some features and some content that we have that's out. I think you might be interested in some upcoming content as well. So this is our Codio website, the main one. If you go up where it says platform, And then you will see our courseware catalog. And this is where we keep all of our resources. So I can scroll down and take a look at a lot of the courses that we have to offer. You can search here. You can look at different categories here. So we have a data analytics course that we think is really good. This is one of our newer courses. It's done in Python. You get a bunch of Jupyter notebooks, a lot of hands-on labs, all of those things. So if you're doing data analytics, this is definitely something that you want to check out. And so it's really simple. If you have a Codio account, I can just click on this course and it will tell me there's a button right here that says add courseware. And this is going to link it to your Codio account and it will import the course for you. And just to reiterate that creating an account at Codio is free. You can look at our content for free. You can add test students to the content and go through it and get the student experience. You can, like Evan was doing, looking at the preview and looking at the edit mode, you can change all these things. We're not going to charge you for any of that. We will only ask that you pay once you start adding real students to a course. So we encourage you to go to the resource library, add any courses that you might be interested in to your account. There's no cost associated with that. So there is a button here that you can click and that will add the course for you. And if you scroll down, you'll get a description of the course and take a look at some of the modules, et cetera, et cetera. But again, with the click of a button, you can add it to your account. And again, there's no charge for that. I will go back and bring a few more courses to your attention. We have a generative AI course. That's really good. This is a bit different. We are actively working on an AI literacy course. So I know a lot of institutions are having students learn how to use AI, and these could be every student on campus, not just CS students. But this particular course here, this is done with the CS student in mind. So this essentially walks you through the OpenAI API, and you can learn all the different API calls. So if you want to do text to text or text to speech, speech to text, text to image, you get the idea. But this is an in-depth exploration of generative AI, and it's done with Python. I'm going to talk more about LLMs here in a bit. I think we have a really cool feature that you're going to like, but we know that AI is really popular, and so we have one that is really geared towards developers and how a developer would use AI to generate things that they need, not so much writing code for you. Although we do have something on that as well. So this is our resource library. You can explore this. If you are logged in this browser session to your Codio account, that one click is going to be very, very easy. And so once you take a look at our content, and I'm just going to pull up here an example of this is some Python content that we have. And you kind of saw this with Evan, that you have a course, and a course is comprised of modules, and every module has a series of assignments. When we author content, we tend to have 3 different kinds of assignments. So this is your basic instructional assignment, most of these ones that you see here. And the job of an instructional assignment is just to introduce a topic, and we'll look into that a bit more here in a second. We also have a lab. A lab is a little more hands-on, less instructional in terms of, here's this thing you've never seen before, let me tell you what it is. Essentially, we're saying, let's take a look at what we've just talked about, and labs tend to draw on previous modules as well, and let's put them together in a fun and interesting way to do something a little more engaging. And then we have coding exercises. Coding exercises, like the name implies, those are, like Evan was showing, auto-graded coding examples that your students are going to do. And we talked about advanced code tests and standard code tests, and there are other kinds of code tests that my colleague Sharon will show you as well. But generally, we want students to demonstrate that they have learned something. We're going to evaluate it. And again, everything is going to be passed back to your LMS. So let's take a look at some of these assignments now. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the parameters one. I'm just going to go ahead and preview. And that's going to spin up a container. We run on Ubuntu. So the general thing that we say is if it runs on Ubuntu, it should run on Codio. Evan kind of alluded to the fact that we have these stacks. So a big problem can be dependency management, that students are running different versions of software or packages or applications. And you can set this up that when a student loads it up, everything is templated, so everyone has the same version number. So that's a really handy feature that you just don't have to worry about. So we start with learning objectives. That's more for the teacher. But we have this concept overview and we try to put it in plain English, for the students. What are we going to be learning about as we go through this assignment? And so we have this idea of a concept overview. And then we're going to get into the assignment itself. And this layout is very familiar. Evan was showing it to you earlier. We have the instructional content on the right, it's called our guide, and we have the interactive component on the left. Here we have our default code editor. It is built on the underlying technology of VS Code, but you are not relegated to using only this code editor. There are some very cool features that Sharon will show you here in a bit, but you could easily put Jupyter Notebooks, you could put VS Code. You can install any of the extensions for VS Code. It's a full version of VS Code that you can run inside Codio. And again, you can template that so that when a student loads up their version of the assignment, it has the VS Code. It has all of the extensions. You can set it however you want, and the students will get the same experience. We have a very hands-on approach. We stress learn by doing. And so we give them code snippets that you can just copy and paste in here, and then you can run it. Again, Evan showed you this. We often have sections that will encourage students to explore and try new things. Again, we want a learn by doing approach. And it's going to say, what happens if you change this? What happens if you change that? Some of these will cause error messages, in particular this one down here. So let's just go ahead and we're going to go ahead and add 10 to that, and we're going to run it. And you will notice right here that I have an error message. And this right here, it pops up and it says, I can help explain the error. This little feature down here is called Coach. Coach is an AI assistant that you can turn on for students to help them with their programming. This is not turned on by default. I know some instructors are a bit leery of leaning too heavily on AI. And so we consulted some CSED research before we rolled out this feature. And we were ignoring the use case where students say, please solve the problem for me, right? We wanted to know how were students using AI when they were not asking it to solve the problem. And there were three main use cases. Please explain the error message because I don't know what it means. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Please tell me what I'm supposed to do. Or I've started writing code to solve the problem, but I don't know what my next step is. So if I click on the coach, you're going to notice those are the three things that it is going to ask us. So I'm going to say I need help with an error message. I can copy this right here. I can paste it and run it. And it's going to look at the error message. It has my code file as part of the context as well. So it can say, like, you provided 3 arguments, and it even cites the exact line of offending code, and it puts it into plain English. Python error messages are getting a lot better. Java, not so much. So this is a really handy if you're using something like Java. Now, I also want to bring this to your attention. I'm going to go ahead and click on explain an error, and it will let me write anything I want. So let's say solve the problem for me. And I'm going to run that. And it's going to say that text doesn't look like an error message, right? So we are trying to put guardrails in place so that this AI feature can be used by students as a tool, but not as a replacement for the actual act of thinking through the code that they wrote, writing the code itself, correcting the mistakes, things of that nature, okay? So, and again, this is turned off by default. You can turn it on. Sharon will talk about what that looks like. And you do not have to turn on all 3 of these. For example, you can just turn on 1 of the 3 or 2 of the 3, or you could decide for these coding exercises, I don't want any coach features there, or I only want 1 coach feature there. One of the things that you're going to hear us maybe not say directly, but show you in this demonstration is that we're a very flexible platform. I'm not going to get into this, but Coach is extensible. So if you want to write your own little Coach extension that students can use, or modify any of these extensions that we have here, maybe you think they're too restrictive, you can open them up a bit. So again, we have a webinar that you can look at. We record all our webinars. We talk about that. It's documented. But if you're somebody that this is appealing and you want to take it and go further, we certainly give you that ability. So that is our coach feature here, and this is what students can use. We have a white paper on our website, and we did some research on this. You'll have to forgive me, I don't have the statistics off the top of my head, but there were meaningful improvements in course completion rates and also median grade for students that use Coach as compared to students who do not use Coach. So it is a very useful tool that we allow you to have and turn on for your students. There's no extra fee associated with turning on Coach for your students. So back to our instructional material, we introduce another concept that we want them to use. We give them code, we want them to explore, and then we have a little formative assessment at the bottom. I'm viewing this from the teacher point of view, so you're going to see the answers at the bottom. Students wouldn't see that as well. So that is just generally how we do these instructional assignments. Again, it's very hands-on. We want them to explore. We introduce 2, maybe 3 concepts per page, and then we have the ability to have coach to help them out, and we end every page with formative assessment. So that is just our generic learning assignment. And I'm going to go back now to the course, and we're going to take a look at the lab assignment here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this one up. I've already put in all the code for them, but basically what this lab does is in the previous assignment, they learned how to work with files, to read and write files, including CSV files. So for this lab, students are going to read a CSV file. It has all kinds of movie data in it. And then they're going to write a series of functions that will allow the user to interact with the terminal and display movie information in various ascending and descending orders. And we rank it by various categories. And so again, this is going to walk the student through several pages of, let's write some functions to do this. Let's write some functions to do that. And I'm going to come over here. I believe this is the last one. Yes. So this is the end of it. So I have all the code in here, like I already said. So I'm going to go ahead and click try it. You will notice that I pull up the terminal because this is a terminal application that they're working on. Students have access to the terminal. Like Evan was showing you in the layout, you can make it prominent that they have, as soon as they log in, there's a panel with a terminal in it. Students have full root access, so they can pip install whatever packages they want. That's not a problem. Again, we talked about templating, and you can pip install packages, save it as a stack, and give it to students as well. But as students progress, maybe you want to limit the amount of assists that you give them, and you want them to learn how to do dependency management on their own. You certainly have that ability. And so I can go over here and say I want to sort by genre, and I want to do ascending order. You get the general idea. But this particular thing is not so much about introducing new concepts. It's about taking things that students have learned and putting it into something that's a little more applied, a little more engaging. So that is what we would call a lab. And the last type of assignment, that we have are coding exercises. So I'm going to pull up one of these. So Evan showed you a lot behind the scenes of standard code test and advanced code test. But I just want to show you about how we would oftentimes present information to students. Again, we have a freeze code block. This is a standard code test. Again, it's input-output testing. So I'm just going to go ahead and freeze this section of code where I'm passing information from buttons to the script, and then will ultimately end up in the auto grader. And so I can give students a problem. I can give them test cases. So, well, first, let me go ahead. Again, this is the teacher point of view. That's why I see the answer. I'm going to go ahead and put a solution in here. We like to give students test cases. So like we give them a problem, they're working on it. How do they know they're done? Do they just submit it right away? Again, submission policies, we're very flexible. You can say you can have 1 submission, 2 submissions, unlimited submissions, all of this kinds of stuff, right? So again, it's totally up to you, but we like to give them test cases. So I wrote some code. I think it solves the problem as stated. And if I run it, I can see like, oh, okay, I passed that test case, and I'm going to run it with this input. I'm passing in a string. I'm passing this test case. I think I'm ready to go ahead and run the auto grader. And again, that's just what it's going to do. So this is very emblematic of how we present coding exercises. There are about 5 problems per coding exercise assignment. They get progressively a little more difficult, But again, they are all auto-graded. They all have immediate feedback to the student. And all of these grades are sent back to the LMS, right? So there's nothing that you have to do. And I want to reiterate what Evan was showing you, that if you have custom grading scripts already done, you can import those into Codio. And in the case of something like a unit test, there's no modifications that you need to do to the test script itself. If you have something that is not a unit test, but is a grading script, there are some minor changes that we have to do to collect feedback and points so we can pass it back to the LMS. I just saw in the chat a question about the handshake between software and LMS. That is definitely a Sharon question, and I'm sure she will cover that. I don't know if she'll show it to you exactly because you have to have like a Blackboard instance or something like that up and running, but she can definitely explain how that works. Okay. So this is a coding exercise. And again, every module that we have has some kind of summative assessment with formal problems that are asked to be solved. Those problems have an autograder. Those grades will go back to the LMS. And so that is generally really, no matter what you're looking at in terms of whether it's that generative AI course or data analytics or just this introduction to Python content, they all have the same basic form. They all have the same basic feel. So I do want to talk about a few other things as well. I'm going to scroll down here a bit in this module. I talked about the generative AI course, and that's more about making API calls to OpenAI. We also know that sometimes people use AI as a tool to help them write code. And so we do have a module of this. Currently, it's in our Python course, and we are using Claude. And so you'll notice here, we kind of go over just working with the command line, working with file and directories, just to kind of get them up to speed if they haven't really done this before. And then we're not teaching them prompt engineering, although our AI literacy course goes into prompt engineering, because in this particular one, we're not asking them to write the best prompt or the most efficient prompt to generate the most accurate code that you can. That is a legitimate use case for AI in coding, but in this particular module, we really want to say, how do we use AI, in this particular instance, Claude Code, as a tool? So this one goes over debugging. In this budget app, they are given several different Python files, and they're just kind of thrown into it. And so they kind of walk them through the first steps of, okay, Claude, explain what this application is doing, right? Just like getting some point of view, some reference points, right? I'm going to pull up one of these things here with Claude. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this or things that are very similar to Claude, but what I want to show you here is something really cool. So again, we've got our learning objectives. We have our concept overview. All right, what is Claude Code? Okay, so we've got a terminal, and I'm going to let that, there we go. I'm going to write Claude, and there you go. I want to draw your attention to what you didn't see. You did not see the student being asked to create an account. You did not see a student asked to authenticate, and you will not see students being notified that they now owe additional money for usage. We use something called an LLM proxy to handle all of this. LLMs can be very interesting. They can be a lot of fun to use, but in reality, there's a lot of friction that's involved in getting this set up. And we want to remove as much friction as we can. So if you look over here, we have in our settings, you should see a LLM right here. By default, we have OpenAI and Anthropic, and I've turned on Anthropic. And then we have limits per student. So we know this is really easy. And so what the proxy does is it uses this API key that talks to the LLM provider. The student talks to the LLM proxy. And so that is where all the authentication is happening. So they're not asked to do anything, right? They can use the service as they want. And we know, as fun as this can be, it can also get quite expensive. So we put up some guardrails, and you can sit here and say, we're going to, how many requests can they make an hour? How many requests can they make a day? We can do budgeting for the day or the hour. We can set a maximum course allowance. So if I'm just blowing through money in the first week of your course, you would see, if this were an actual course, there are no students in this course, there would be a dashboard beneath here. and you would see usage in the last day, the last week, the last month. And you'd see this Patrick guy in your class who's just blowing through his allotted budget. And you could message me and say, okay, it's time to slow down. There's some more work to be done. And at the end, if you've got some money left over, you can go ahead and play and have some fun. You will see right here, we have custom LLM settings. These are the two that we use by default. You are not required to use them. If you use another LLM service, right? So we're talking to GitHub, you have GitHub Copilot, you can set that up in here. You can turn that on and save your changes. You can set the limits and all of that stuff. So even though the default is Anthropic and I'm showing Claude, it does not have to be that way. We can have a lot of these different tools and different LLM providers be connected in our LLM proxy. But the general idea is this. It's a very useful tool. It's a very interesting tool, but there are problems with friction and there are problems with cost. And so we are trying to provide you with a set of tools that can help with some cost certainty and then remove the friction for the student end. So when I talk about that generative AI course, how does it work? How do we get all the students talking? How do we get students, like, how do we handle all that? It's all done for you with the LLM proxy. And again, you can use one of our keys, you can bring your own and set it up that way. And again, if you decide I want to use a different tool besides Claude, that's okay. You can put it on your stack. You can save that stack like Evan was talking about, and you can template it and then give your students that particular tool that you want them to use, have it configured for the LLM proxy, and away you go. So this is a very cool feature that, that there's a lot of AI stuff out there that I wanted to show off how this works. And I know that using Claude for a GitHub classroom is probably not the best choice, but that's just what we use internally. And so that's what we have by default, but you are not obligated to use those tools. You're not obligated to use those providers when it comes to these features. So that's really what I wanted to show you today, is that we have a course catalog where you can get information, not information, you can get pre-existing content with a click of a button into your account. You will not be charged for this. You will only be charged when active students are enrolled in your course. So feel free to explore with any of these courses. I forgot to mention, all of the courses that I've shown you today, whether they're here in the library or the Python course or any of that other stuff, like on Evans, you can go into edit mode and you can edit whatever you want. When it comes to the course itself, we tend to have 3 different approaches in any given module. We just have instructional assignments that introduce concepts to students. It's all done with a very hands-on, learn by doing approach. We have labs that are a little more in depth, a little more engaging, where we're taking these skills and putting them to use. And then we have coding exercise. This is a summative assessment. They are all auto-graded. Students get immediate feedback, and all of those grades get passed to the LMS. We have the wonderful coach tool that you can turn on and show students or give students additional support. And then we have the LLM proxy if you need to use AI in any of your courses. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Sharon, and I will stop sharing.
Uh-oh, I've got that system settings thing. I thought I had that fixed. Hold on here. Microsoft Teams. Okay, hopefully I'm not going to have to restart. All right, so select tab. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. View, are you seeing Codio demo course? Great. All right. So those are definitely tough acts for me to follow, but I'm going to do my best. And I'm going to start out with the environments. This Codio demo course comes with your account if you're a new organization, and you can take a look at these environments. You have VS Code. You can install any extensions you want in VS Code. You create a new stack, and then the student will get the extensions you've installed. You can see I've installed Copilot. The student would individually sign in to it, but they have the environment I've set up. So that is VS Code next to Codio, so you don't need the Codio ID. And also we have Jupyter Lab running next to Codio. I should have said you can always collapse that guide. So you have your full screen real estate is taken up by the environment you want. You could have RStudio. I can't even think of all the things you could list as your environment other than the Codio ID, including just a bare bones terminal if you want your students to install everything themselves and use Emacs. And yes, there is a customer we have that wants to use Emacs. You can do it with Codio. So now are you all seeing my switch tabs? Because are you looking at Jupyter? No. Oh, okay, unfortunately. So let me stop sharing and try again. Yeah. So let me try the whole window. It didn't want to let me do a window. Microsoft Teams. All right, let me see if it'll let me switch tabs. So here's VS Code. You're seeing VS Code and Codio, right? Yes, okay. This is going to be painful if I have to do this for everything. But let me just get through this part and then we'll be in the whole show the Jupyter Lab. Okay, and you're all seeing Jupyter Lab there? Yes, and I can collapse and expand the guide. Good? Okay, well, pretend like I said all those things when the actual thing was open, and then we're going to move forward. I'm going to have to do this painful process each time because it doesn't seem to let me share a window. So in a second, you should see a behavior insights course. And now I'm going to return to where Evan was explaining the behavior insights again. I'm going to go to this one strings that he was looking at. It still seems to be good. Let me explain these a little bit better. What I like to do is sort by time for students, and then I can see who's getting this done too quickly or who's taking a long time. So I can see that Chris Eastman is only taking a minute. So let me take a look at this. And what are these metrics we're checking? Amount of time spent, we've already discussed that. Characters per second, are they typing way too fast or maybe just pasting? You can see that there. Coding versus debugging time. This is the time they spent coding. We don't see any debugging time. Debugging time is when you press the try it button and you're reflecting perhaps, or you check it and you're fixing. So there's no playing around here. This person is just pasted it in probably, and well, we'll see that for sure. And then finally, insertions versus deletions. When you're adding code, you're moving things around. You may make line 3, line 1, and things like that. So again, another red flag here. And we can look at the behavior insights, which actually, I'll skip that for this one because Evan already showed that. What I'd like to do is look at something different, for example. So I'm going to go to another student, and looks like everything's still seeing what I want you to see. And I'm going to look at the person who took the most amount of time and see what happened there, because behavior insights isn't just about cheating. It's also about getting a sense of your students' work process and what's going on with them. So I'm going to open their project. You can always open a student's project. You have all their projects lined up for you, ready to look at. And it did not switch windows. So I'm going to painfully stop sharing. If anybody has any ideas for how I can fix this quickly, other than exiting and restarting, scream out now. Let's see. Okay. This is painful, but all right, in a second you'll see it. So this is Sam Smith. I know you're seeing this because I can see it too. And I'm going to look at their process, code playback, and we can see what this looks like. So you see, they actually pasted these words. They copied it from here, pasted it here. That's not counting as pasting, the cheating kind of pasting. This is the real kind of pasting you do when you're coding. You take something from the prompt, you put it into the solution, and that's how you work. So we can see they probably ran it, realized they needed to cast those expressions, fix things up. This looks like a normal experience. No, they're not stuck anywhere. With a bigger problem, you might see them stuck, but all in all, it looks good. So I'm going to go back and what I did want to show, so let's see, we're back here. I wanted to go open this student's project, and it's probably going to be a fail, but we'll get there. Thanks for bearing with me on this kind of weird.
Sharon,
Okay, so
when you select share, you don't see an option for just like the screen.
oh, I'll try the screen. Window didn't work for me. That's the problem. So you can see here, and I'll try that next time. Somewhat, you can leave a comment for students. Like, for example, I could have left a comment saying that really, you did that in 1 minute. Could you really have been, well, I probably wouldn't say that. I would say, can you come talk to me after class? That's the kind of comment I would probably leave in that case. But and the student can respond too. I can't make it today. I'll be there tomorrow. Very easy to interact with your student in their workspace with Codio. So we're going to go back here and see where we are. Okay. So I've shown you what I want to show you in this. Let me try resharing because I wanted to show you something completely different. And I'll see if I can share the entire team, the entire screen now. So hopefully this is going to be the last time. Let's see, entire screen. No, it's not letting me do that. I don't know why. Okay. So yeah, unfortunate. So now we're going to take a look at pair programming, team assignments. I know people are really interested in this. This is a great learning feature for students when they can work with somebody else, talk through the code and things like that. This is what I have here is 2 groups. One group hasn't started, the other group has already started. You can see this looks a little different. I don't know if you noticed, I was clicking on 3 dots earlier to get into a student's workspace. Here, there's only workspaces for the team, which is what you want. You want everybody to work on the same files. So that works really well. We're going to first look at the settings before we dive into to the actual what the student workspace looks like. I'm going to go down to the group work. So our group work is designed very intentionally, and students cannot all be typing at the same time. We have a driver and a navigator, and only one person is typing at a time. That is a complete design decision for us so that somebody is paying attention and helping and someone is doing the actual work, that they're both engaged or any number of people are engaged. This other setting you see is shared focus. So if you're sitting in a classroom and you've got 2 people with their heads over one screen, you know everybody's looking at the same thing, great. But if they're in 2 remote locations, one person is coding on their assignment and the other person is looking at some other file and not even paying attention. So shared focus forces the navigator will always see what the driver's view is, and the driver is in control of the view. So that's some interesting stuff about our pair programming that I think makes it unique. So let's see, we're going to open an assignment. I think that's going to just force me to reopen again. It's always something for me with Microsoft Teams. Either I'm using Firefox and it won't work, or there's this. So thank you for bearing with me. In a moment, you will see the assignment. Okay, great. So this is the actual assignment. The way I set this up is there are 3 files. One file is for student A to work on. The other file is student B to work on. And then the third file is a work together kind of thing. So how do you know really that they've worked together? Our friend Code Playback can help with that, because if you go through and you look down here, modified by, you can see who did the work. So E student, that's their username. You'd have to know that. A student did getting on empty string, and let's see, did quite a few things. You can see exactly who did what. You don't have to take their word for the fact that like one person did the work and the other person just sat there, or they both did it but they didn't. You've got proof in the pudding there. Okay, I really hate that expression. Anyway, moving on. So back to setting up the assignments, you can set them up manually, or you can upload the assignments from a CSV file. Oh, and we ended up where I wanted, so that's good. Just back down, if you can take the group assignments from another one, or you can upload those values. So the next thing I wanted to show you was our LLM rubric grader. So let's see what happens if I close a tab. Okay. Let me try that again. Excuse me. All right, back to this. In 1 second, you'll see the exercise I prepared for you for the LLM rubric grader. And we're going to take a look at this from edit mode first. So the great thing about the LLM rubric grader is it solves that problem where if you have an exercise, it doesn't just have inputs and outputs, or you have random values that you're testing, or it's a creative assignment and it cannot be put into a script or input output. The LLM rubric grader solves all those problems without forcing you to write scripts. So let's take a look at what this is. What it does is it takes the prompt from the exercise as well as the solution file, and it generates, using AI, some rubric items. You can, and also when you're in the process, you can give it specific prompts. Like I always like to tell it, make sure that there are good comments. That's my standard for it. And this exercise doesn't require it, but I want to see that for all my students. So that's one of my requirements: clear applicable comments. And the logic has been implemented, conditional statements, everything that's in the prompt is here. And if you didn't like them, you could delete them. It's under your control. You can edit them, but it gets you started without having to meticulously write these rubric items or write a script. So now we're going to look at this from a student type of view. We'll skip that. Let's go back. And let's see if we can. Yep. Okay. No, I'm back where I was before. That's not what I want. And this is probably going to. All right. So here we are. I can log in as a test student. And I don't know why this is working now. Okay, so here I am, a test student. I have this problem. I get bonus points for using a function. It doesn't say I need comments, but I know my teacher always wants it, but I'm kind of lazy, and I'm actually going to paste the answer in, not just because I'm lazy, but I don't want you to all have to watch me type. So this is one version. There's the run it button, which just runs it, but I've given them unlimited attempts so they can run the check it button and run the auto grader every time. This just takes a minute. This is using an LLM to check the rubric against the code, and the student sort of passed some, failed others. The logic was implemented. We already talked. They didn't do the comments, and they didn't use a function. So here they've gotten immediate feedback about what they've done, and they can go fix it. They don't have to wait. If, for example, you were manually going in and checking for comments if they were good, and they had to wait for a grading cycle to go back and fix it. Now they no longer have to. They can get that feedback right away and fix everything and run it again and see that they've passed, and then they can mark as complete and get full points. So, because ultimately, like if they get it done right, if they've learned how to do it right and know what they did wrong, they're really learning the material the best. So that's our LLM rubric grader. And I'm going to switch back to a teacher's account, and I'm going to show you something else in this course, and it's still miraculously following me where I want to be. Unbelievable. All right. So I want to take you through some settings. We have one of the more interesting ones that I want to highlight first is prerequisite assignments. So if you have students who like to jump around and you don't want them to do that, you can have prerequisite assignments. You must start, complete, or pass this assignment. You could choose what the passing threshold is. But usually people do it as completed, so students don't jump around. They do things in sequential order. You could have your entire course set up like that. The other thing you can do, which I haven't set up here, is copy workspace. So if you have like a module long project that builds, each assignment builds on everything, but you want to scaffold it piece by piece, and you want students to work on it slowly, you set up these multiple assignments with each part of the problem, and then you can, once the student completes each assignment, it will copy the workspace to the next one. So this is a really great feature for big projects. I'm not going to save any of those changes. And I'm just seeing what I've forgotten to talk about. So I wanted to show you some other different settings we have here. Exam proctoring. People are always asking, can I set a time limit on an assignment, not just for an exam, but just in general? And yes, you can, time limits on assignments. And then you can add extensions for people who need extra time on a per student basis, or if you have a whole list of them and 1,000 students, you can use a CSV file to adjust the extensions. You don't have to go in and edit each student's settings for each assignment. This can be done through our API. A shuffle question order is great when everybody's in the same room and you don't want anybody looking at each other's work. And forward-only navigation, someone asked for that. I don't know why, but it's useful, I guess. Single login. So single login is great for something, for example, like an exam. You've got everybody in a proctored room, but what's going on? Someone else gave their login to their friend who graduated 3 years ago and is in another country and doing their work for them. No, single login will only allow one person at once. So this is a really a feature that people really like. And then when you have single login turned on, you can restrict the IP address. So if you want only people who are on campus to work on, to be able to open the assignments, you can do that. Depending on how your network is set up at school, you might be able to restrict to specific buildings or even classrooms, but that is not guaranteed because the public IP address might still be the same. And then the last thing I'll show on settings was something that Patrick touched on, the virtual coach. You can toggle on those those settings either for on an assignment basis or for the entire course. You can mix and match if you want exams to not have any kind of virtual coach, you keep them all off. You can see here I have more than the basic 3. These are 2 custom extensions I've created, one tailored to JavaScript and one Jupyter Notebook helper. You could do anything. Our documentation shows how to write your own extensions. We have many customers who have custom extensions. They want to be very specific about what kind of coaching they give to their students. So that's Virtual Coach. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is data exports. I don't want to save any of that. So we were just talking about Coach, so I'll cover that first. You can export Coach usage. You can see what students use Coach for. If you see every student using summarized prompt for one specific assignment, you're going to say to yourself, I should probably rewrite that assignment. No one could get it on the first take. So it's just valuable data. Which students are struggling with syntax problems, things like that. You can see that all in the coach logs. And then, the coursework and assessment data, that's fairly standard, but the course access data, people like to see that. You can see project opens, project closes, along with IP addresses for both students and teachers. That's really helpful if you have TAs and you want to know, like, how much time are they spending on grading? This makes it sound like you can be a spy, which I guess is true, but I'm sure there are positive aspects to this as well. So that's our export feature. And that was a lot. Very quickly, the last thing I want to show is our help center. Is that going to show up? No, because that's in a new window. Let me stop sharing and reshare that. And this will be the last time, I promise, that you have to deal with that. Codio documentation, share. You'll see it in a second. Guess we've had trouble keeping up. Sorry, do I talk too fast?
That's what we have the Q&A for that. That's okay. No, okay. You do not. You're great.
Thanks. All right. So our help center is docs.codio.com, and the Getting Started tab is a great place to get started, as you can tell by the name. And the how-to videos are a great help. They highlight our premier features, how to use them. For those who are visual learners, you can see walkthroughs of many major features. And then, of course, search has search, and you can search for anything you want and see how we've documented it. So I'm going to hand back to Evan, who didn't have a problem with his screen, and that'll be a lot more pleasant for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Look at that trend. Did I get it? Oh man, that was a good trend. That was a good transition. Okay, so thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, we've covered a lot. We've answered a lot of questions already, but we still have another 15 minutes to answer questions in the Q&A. So Patrick showed us. Well, let's start with me. I showed like the process of importing some of your repos from GitHub. Or if it's not in GitHub, you can upload it to the file tree. But like Codio will run your already existing coding materials, or you can add some of ours and teach from it inside of the platform. And what we're really offering is a supported path forward from GitHub Classrooms. So I'm including on this page a link to sign up for a free instructor account. I encourage you to do so. You should never, go in blind to a new platform. You should look at it and feel it for yourself. And so that's why we have free access for instructors. So please sign up for your own account if you'd like, and we'll focus the rest of this time on Q&A. If we did not answer one of your questions in the chat, it was moving kind of quickly, we may have lost something, please don't be offended. Will you would you mind please posting that question once more and we can cover it again? The comment about keyring deprecation, that actually sounds like a known Ubuntu 22 issue where there's something about if it says something about Chrome not having the right authentication, that's like an Ubuntu 22 thing. There's a command that I don't know offhand to update that authentication. You can either do that, or you could go to project stack settings. And then if you search our stacks for VS Code, there are a few pre-made, pre-existing VS Code stacks that you could switch over to. And I believe the preview port for VS Code is 4,000. It might be 3050. But, you know, you can also email us and we can assist with that. And integration with local IDEs. I'm going to guess that I'm going to suppose that means like syncing between your desktop IDE and Codio, which I don't think we have. You can, of course, from Codio, you can export contents and then re-upload them into the workspace. But I don't think that there is a mechanism from the container, from the Codio container.
So Evan, we have a Codio app. If you go to codio.com/download, this has been out quite a long time, and it runs on Mac, Windows, and Linux, and I believe it can sync. I've never actually used this tool. But this goes into another question about students integrate with GitHub. You absolutely can do that. So if your student were to work remotely on, excuse me, they work locally on their own machine, they could push their work to GitHub. And then within Codio, you have access to a terminal and you can connect. I don't know if you want to show that, Evan, there are little graphical tools where you can connect, you know, remotes and stuff, and you can just do git pull. And it will pull from the Git repo. You can do that as well. So there is a Codio app. I have not used it, so I cannot speak to how well it works. But we do have great integration with GitHub.
Yeah, so I'm not going to run any commands, but go ahead, Patrick.
I was also, since you're here, if you could go to Codio Tools, install software, and the Codio menu bar tools. So if somebody's asking about you want to install VS Code, I would recommend that you install it from here, just getting it to run in a container and then having that show up under the right port. There's some stuff you've got to do behind the scenes. We've done it for you. And so this is a way that you can install VS Code onto your project. Remember, once you install VS Code, you need to save a stack, right? You've now altered the stack, but we have this all set up for you so that it will run properly on the right port and all of that stuff. So if you're going to install VS Code, I would highly suggest you do it this way. It's going to save you a lot of headache.
Yeah, you can always install whatever you want directly from the terminal. The install software utility that we have here, it's just Ansible scripts that we manage to facilitate the install process. Just a one click, make sure everything's updated and get it installed. If you go to project stack settings, you can select the current stack, and then under all, they're going to be a lot, but do I have one that I could recommend? If you have access to Codio Dev EdDev stack, that's always a good one. There is not an affix certified. Yeah. If I have a moment, it's only going to take me a moment to show integration with Canvas. And somebody asked about that earlier. To do so, I just have to enable LTI for my course. And I have other LTI options here that are great, but I'm going to skip over them in the interest of time. Then in Canvas, if I log in, I already have, we have documentation on how to add developer keys, how to add apps in Codio, but the developer key is created, Codio is installed in Canvas apps, and this is more or less what it looks like for other LMSs. I just have access to a Canvas administrative account. So if I go to courses and start a new course, I create it, and I go to assignments, and I create a new assignment. If the Codio tool is already installed, I go to submission type, external tool, find Codio. I don't know why they're tool. Did I make two of them? Whatever, it's working. So if I select my test classroom, that was the one that I just enabled, test classroom. And I go to my gradebook functions demo assignment, the one I created during today's presentation. I'll select load this in a new tab, save and publish. Now load, I'll switch to a student and load it in a new window. And it's gonna, because I'm signing in as a student, it is provisioning an account as this test student. It's created the account. I landed in that assignment that I worked on at the start of this presentation. You can see the freeze code block that I mentioned earlier cannot be modified. I can run my code tests, so on and so forth. And then if I switch back to Teams interface blocking me. If I switch back to leave student view and I open this assignment as the instructor, it'll take me to the overview. And now I can see that test student from Canvas has already signed in. I really need to improve my auto grader because they scored a 65 without doing anything. So that, I guess that's on me. No, I made the test so that they could pass it. But yeah, the students enrolled. Handshake shown through LMS. Sharon or Patrick is there. We have a couple more minutes. Did anything else come in that we can demonstrate?
I also wanted to point out, this is Morgan, hi, that y'all have a lot of webinars that you've done already. I'm going to link to those and to your events page because you do, upcoming events where you're doing more demos as well. So folks should really take a look at some of these past webinars that Codio's produced. It may answer some additional questions you have, or, they may dive deeper into a tool that we didn't get to dive deep in today. But I'm going to share those links too so that folks can look at some of your other webinars you've been doing recently and the events page so they can sign up for new ones because we're not going to get to every single question today, I don't think. There's a lot of like so many tools that you'll have in this product. So I want to make sure that folks are aware of those other ones. So just saying that I'm going to link those too.
Thank you, Morgan.
Evan, somebody was asking about, is there a place where they can easily contact us with any questions or recommendations? And you might have a slide for that, but we do have some ways for that. There we go.
Yeah, I figured Sharon is gonna put the links. Sharon, are you putting the links to contact us?
I think support's a great place to start. Help at
Oh, yeah.
Codio.com. Then they'll send you whoever to the right place. That's a great
Cool.
starting point.
Cool. Sorry, Patrick, what was your question?
No, I was just going to talk about that. I didn't know if you had a slide set up for how
No,
to reach out or anything like that. Yeah.
No, I probably should have added that slide.
So we're a really small company. If you write into support, probably 90% of us will see it just because we're always monitoring what's going on there. So you're not throwing it into some black hole of support where nobody is ever there. We're watching that. We're answering it quickly. And if the people there can't answer it, it gets passed on to whoever can.
Yes, I'm glad somebody said this. Other people are going to have this experience on this call. When you sign up for or when you request an instructor account, you very well may be rejected. Don't take it personally. We have like a screening process, and whoever was doing it just like, I don't know, maybe they weren't readily available. If you respond to that email just like with a link that shows that you're an instructor at the institution that you say you're from, it'll be approved.
There's an exception in that if there's already an organization for your school, we need to add you to it. This is not just fussy on our part. This is for billing and LTI purposes. We need people at the same institution in the same organization. So we'll quickly resolve this for you. Don't be insulted. Just write back and say, what's going on? I need help.
We'll give it a minute and then
Yeah, I'm not seeing too much else coming through the Q&A. And it looks like y'all have answered just about everything in the chat miraculously. I don't know how you did it all. There's lots of questions in there. Thanks so much for keeping track of it. We're also keeping track in the chat, and if anything comes up after, we can pull it. Yeah, Cody is going to also provide just like some resources. I was keeping track of all the links you shared earlier to just various questions. So we'll have those in the teacher toolbox, links to some of those docs that you mentioned, et cetera, so that folks can quickly reference those again after. It's like someone did put in one last question.
yeah, I'll just
you're
I'll just
answering
answer
right
this
there.
out loud.
There you go.
Like there's no surprise billing. Like that's not, there's no like information entered that we could surprise you with a withdrawal from. Like if you set up, like if you adopt Codio, like there's a process to, with your institution, how do we set up payment? There's always a process. So there would never be a surprise bill. And teacher accounts are free. So like if you're signed into your teacher account, there's nothing you could do that would run up a bill.
Amazing. I will. Oops. Okay. I'll pop back in. So we are about done. There's some claps in the chat there I'm seeing come through. I wanted to thank all three of you so much for coming in and doing this presentation and demo for our educators. We're just so excited to work with you and really appreciate your partnership. We will be around for the rest of the day. We have those links and those resources, so we're going to share those out to everyone as we do with everyone's sessions this week. Yeah, I guess everyone in the chat saying thank you for the demonstration. Yeah, thank you so much for the demo. If you want to gonna do a clapping react for myself. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you for having
we-
us.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for joining. Awesome, and thanks for excellent questions. And everyone that's joining right now for this demo, basically you can kind of hang out because I sent out a little kind of update on the upcoming schedule. Our next session starts at noon, not after lunch. So we have a few minutes. I will be online. I'll stay and keep this room open for anyone else that has any other general questions. Yeah, this is awesome.
Bye.
Thank y'all so much. Thank you. Awesome. So yeah, that was Codio. We are back in 30 minutes. Yes. So little update there. We will hear from 50 Foundation at noon, noon PST or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they will be sharing a bit about the open source solution as our open source partner in the transition. So you won't want to miss that one either. Of course, as all with all of these sessions, we are recording them, and so you'll get to see and you'll also get those resources after. We're working really hard with our partners to make sure that we're along the same timeline of our sunset, so that by the time or before, of course, we're completely sunset, you have time hopefully to migrate over to one of these new solutions. So. I will turn off my camera and mic, but I'll stay in the chat for about 30 minutes, and we will be back live in, yeah, about 30 minutes. Thanks, everyone. popping on to say that we'll get started in about 5 minutes. Thanks, y'all.
Morgan, when you have a moment, would you mind promoting Carter Zenke to presenter too?
Sure thing. I've been monitoring. There he is. Got it. All righty. He's all promoted. Cool. I'm going to bring myself on screen briefly, take this one down. We have folks joining and rapidly coming back. It's already jumping up in my little count here. So we'll give folks a few minutes to join. We're going to be starting in a couple of minutes with the 50 Foundation. But as always, I'll be monitoring the chat and adding links in there. I'll be collecting all links to be shared later in our resource repo for all of the folks who could join both with us live and asynchronously, so you can follow along. And if you have questions that you'd like for David Malin and his group to answer towards the end for the Q&A, go ahead and pop those in the Q&A feature. I know that some of you are joining in the browsers, might not line up to get you the Q&A. We can take those in chat as well, but we're going to try to direct as much as we can to the Q&A so that folks can find those links really easily in the chat. So we'll give folks just about one more minute to return back from our break, and then we will get started. Thanks. All right, all right. We are going to get started. Thanks everyone for coming back after the break. And this is our final like big session of the week. It's been a really lovely inaugural GitHub Educator Summit. As we mentioned today is all dedicated to classroom. So we started the day with Avni kind of introducing the classroom sunset timeline, walking through a little bit about our decision and approach behind that. And we are now going to be joined by 50 Foundation to chat through some of the solutions we've been working on with them and let them tell us a little bit about what that would look like for educators. And so I'm going to not take up too much of our time here up top. I can still see the number ticking up, so people are returning back from break. I'll just repeat one more time that we were recording this session, so we can share that with y'all after. I'll be tracking all of the links in the chat, and I'll be collecting them and making sure they're added to the resource repo. And we have the Q&A feature for the group to answer questions towards the end of the session as well. So I will bring on the group, or you can take yourselves out of the from behind the green room, and I can bring some of y'all on. David, should I bring everyone on at once? Oh, you're muted. Sorry, you're muted, I think. There you go.
Sure, if you don't mind, just to put some faces with names, and then some of the team will be
Yeah.
behind the scenes for questions.
Let's bring everybody on. All right. Cool. I think we have everyone. So I will mostly hand it over to you. Whoever would like to get started, we could do a little bit of a roundtable so y'all can introduce yourselves, and then I'll mostly be off camera, but helping you monitor any screen shares and things like that that you like to have up. And like I said, I'll be in the chat if you need me, and yeah, we can get started.
All right, thank you, Morgan, and to our GitHub friends for having us. It's nice to see some familiar names in the chat too. My name is David Malin. By day, I'm a computer science faculty at Harvard, teaching a course called CS50. I'm here with a few of my colleagues, both on campus and off, so that you can ask any of us questions via the chat in the coming hour. Carter, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi everyone, Carter Zenke, part of the team here, and happy to answer questions you have. I'll pass to Brian.
Hi everyone, I'm Brian. I also work on the teaching and learning team here, and we'll be excited to talk to you about Classroom 50 today. And Rongshen?
Hi everyone, I'm Rongshen. I'm a software developer at CS50. Happy to see you all here. Colton?
Hi everybody, my name is Colton Ogden. I'm a learning technologist with 50 Foundation, mostly doing various programming things. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to the team who's here and not here. Hopefully you should see some slides, the first one of which says Classroom 50 that Brian is kindly sharing for us, and I'm in a separate video tile myself. So my name is indeed David Malin. I teach a course at Harvard called CS50, which is our introduction to the intellectual enterprises of computer science and the art of programming for both majors and non-majors. On campus, we might have 100 or a few hundred students on campus. Online, we might have a few hundred or even a few thousand by way of the MOOC version of the course, the massive open online course, which is to say that over the years we've had to manage classrooms both small and large. And I dare say we're the type of group that's tried most every solution out there, not just for CS50, but for a set of other courses as well. In fact, on this next slide, you'll see just some screenshots of some content that's available at that edx.org/CS50 URL. And this includes not just CS50, but precursor courses, more introductory on the intersection of business and computer science, follow-on classes on artificial intelligence and web programming and the like, which is to say that we've had a mix of courses that include programming and therefore submissions of code, and also short answers and Q&A. But our focus today, of course, is on a successor to GitHub Classroom itself, particularly for our code-oriented classes. Among the things we've used GitHub for over the years is pretty much everything. I dare say over the years, we've tried most every open source tool, every commercial tool, and even implemented some of our own homegrown solutions. And I would say in recent years, what we found to be the most effective was to write as little code as we can for the sake of having less to maintain, fewer bugs in our own code and the like, and to really stand on the shoulders of platforms that are popular out there, GitHub among them. So for instance, we've used GitHub Classroom Over the years, for distributing assignments, as you yourselves might have, we have used GitHub repositories for storing students' submissions, either as part of the course or part of their final projects, GitHub organizations to cluster semesters worth of students all under a GitHub org. We've also used GitHub Teams for managing permissions to give TAs or teaching assistants read or write access to a subset of the course's repositories if they're only responsible for grading a few students. We've used GitHub Actions for auto grading and to automate the process of using our tools or another to get automated feedback. We've used GitHub Code Spaces for writing code. If unfamiliar, this is essentially VS Code in the cloud. We've used this in the form of a single entry point, cs50.dev, that, similar to today's chat, uses GitHub's underlying APIs to automate the process of standing everything up that a student might need at the start of the semester to avoid those inevitable technical difficulties and headaches otherwise. We've also used GitHub OAuth for authentication so that students can just use their GitHub username and password even to access course resources. We've used GitHub Container Registry for storing Docker images. If less familiar, this is just a technology via which you can standardize installation of software and configurations on servers and clients alike. We've also used GitHub Copilot for developing final projects. As an aside, tangential to today, we don't allow use of AI broadly speaking in our classes, but we do allow students to use our own variant thereof built on top of OpenAI and Azure APIs. And we do allow and encourage students to use something native to Code Spaces and VS Code like GitHub Copilot at the end of the course for their final projects. And then lastly, we've used GitHub's REST APIs for just automating as much as we can, which is to say that what you're about to see today, Classroom 50, really leverages a number of these building blocks that we found to be successful over the years so that GitHub and others can do much of the heavy lifting so that we can focus most of our time on the actual teaching and administration of classes without worrying as much about the underlying technology. And so indeed, if you've ever encountered some of CS50's tools in the wild, you might be familiar with tools like Submit 50 and Check 50, which essentially are the CS50 specific versions of what we'll talk here about today. Now, all of the team members you met a moment ago have planted at least a foot off campus in recent years, whereby we've stood up our own outside organization, a public benefit company dubbed the 50 Foundation, whose purpose in life now is to really amplify and extend the kind of work that we've long done on Harvard's campus, focused ever more now on open courseware, freely available educational content, as well as you'll see today, open source software. And so this is meant to be Classroom 50, GitHub's official open source alternative to GitHub Classroom itself. And as you'll see, not only is the code open source, we're also in the process of developing some successor graphical tools as well to make the onboarding process to a tool chain like this possible and all the easier. And ultimately, insofar as it is open source, what features we have not yet implemented are certainly freely implementable by anyone who wants to open a pull request there too. So at this point, allow me to turn things over to Brian for an overview of what these tools can do for you and for anyone.
All right, thanks, David. So I'm going to chat a little bit now about Classroom 50, what it is, how it works, and give you a little bit of a tour of the software. We've been designing it with teachers and students in mind, trying to replicate many of the same workflows that you might be familiar with if you've ever used GitHub Classroom itself. So the goals of Classroom 50 in terms of what we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to create a tool that allows you to create assignments that students can use with starter code, where you could define that starter code in a template repository, much like you could in GitHub Classroom itself. Defining correctness tests. You can define automated tests that will run every time a student submits their code. Then handling the distribution of individual and group assignments in much the same way that GitHub Classroom would create one repository for every student every time they started a new problem. Classroom 50 will do the same thing. And then we'll take care of collecting submissions after students push their code to their repository, grading them automatically, and then giving you as the teacher a way to provide inline qualitative feedback as via commenting on students' code, and then using Classroom 50 to manage the students that are in your different courses and the scores that they've received on individual assignments as well. So these are the goals for what we're trying to achieve with Classroom 50. And I want to talk a little bit about the design of Classroom 50 in particular. So first, as David mentioned, it's entirely open source. Everything you're about to see is part of the open source Classroom 50 project, so that if you want to contribute to it, if you want to extend it, all of that is certainly possible. Second, and importantly, it's all GitHub based. So what we're trying to do is leverage GitHub's existing technologies, GitHub Actions for taking care of automatically running code when students submit their work, GitHub repositories for organizing student submissions. And so all of the design of Classroom 50 is based on using the tools that GitHub provides us and essentially automating many of these common tasks that you might do in order to create a good student experience and a good teaching and grading experience as well. And one consequence of that is that Classroom 50 is entirely serverless. We at the 50 Foundation do not have any servers running Classroom 50 that are storing any student data or student scores. All of that is entirely owned by you. All of the state is entirely just in GitHub repositories, and all of the work is done using GitHub Actions, which means you have total control and ownership over what's going on. If there's something about Classroom 50 that you'd like to do differently, it's incredibly customizable because you have full access to all of the code and the tooling that we're using. It's all just built atop GitHub. So anything that you can do atop GitHub, you can do in Classroom 50 as well. And I'll note, certainly, as I'm talking about any of this, as I'm showing you any of this, if questions come up, feel free to chime in Q&A or in the chat. We'll take questions at the end, of course, too. But if you want to interrupt us with questions, that's certainly welcome as well. So what does Classroom 50 look like? Well, we have two different primary interfaces into Classroom 50. The first interface is a web interface, a website that you can visit or that students can visit. And when you visit, you'll be given the option to manage your classroom. You'll be able to manage your assignments, configure the auto grading tests. And I'll show you a bunch of screenshots and a little bit of a tour of what that web interface looks like in just a moment. And we also have a command line interface. If you're comfortable using the command line, there are command line tools both for students and for teachers that automate many of the same tasks that the web interface is doing and going beyond that as well. So if you want to do things like automate the management of your roster, if you want to automate the creation of assignments and the configuration of auto grading tests, you can use our command line interface to do that too. But ultimately, what both the web interface and the command line interface to Classroom 50 are doing is they're using GitHub's APIs behind the scenes to create repositories, to set up GitHub Actions, to get the result of GitHub workflow runs, and that kind of thing. So if you would rather not use the web interface or the command line interface, you can always go directly to GitHub itself. All of the state for Classroom 50, all of the student rosters, all of the scores, all of the auto grading checks, those are all sort of stored in GitHub repositories. And so if you'd like to look directly at what's going on inside of Classroom 50, you're welcome to go directly to GitHub and find all of that information too. So what information do you need in order to get started with Classroom 50? Well, Classroom 50 is going to assume that you have a GitHub account. And much like GitHub Classroom, Classroom 50 requires you to have a GitHub organization. And in order to enable some of the features that we use in Classroom 50, that organization needs to be on at least the team plan that GitHub offers. And if you're a verified teacher with GitHub Education, then you get that team plan for free. So you can sort of mark that organization as one that you'd like to use with the team plan if you're a verified teacher. So once you have a GitHub organization set up, I'll give you a brief overview for what the Classroom 50 architecture looks like at a high level. But within your GitHub organization, you can set up one or more classrooms. And so your classroom could be like your AP Computer Science Principles class for this coming fall, for example. And you could have, if you're teaching multiple classes in the same semester, that could be multiple classrooms in the same GitHub organization. If you're teaching the same class across multiple semesters, you could have those as different classrooms in the same organization as well. Or if you prefer to keep things organized differently, you could set up multiple GitHub organizations and have classrooms specific to that in each different GitHub organization too. Either way is fine, but within any GitHub organization, you can have multiple Classroom 50 classrooms. And then within each of those classrooms, you can set up, the assignments that go along with those classrooms. And in a moment, I'll show you what that looks like too. Pause in case there are any questions. All right, so what does Classroom 50 actually look like? Well, when you visit Classroom 50 for the first time, you'll be prompted to sign in with your GitHub account. that lets us use GitHub's APIs on your behalf to be able to configure your repositories and everything else that you and your students will need in order to distribute and grade assignments using Classroom 50. And then the entry point into Classroom 50 is an organization. So you'll need a GitHub organization that's going to be used to host all of the repositories, all of the state for your Classroom 50 classroom. So if you've already set up an organization to use with Classroom 50, you'll see it on the main Classroom 50 landing page. If not, you'll be prompted to set up a new Classroom 50 organization, where any organization for which you are an owner of that GitHub organization, you'll have the ability to set up that organization to use with Classroom 50. And there are a number of things that we do when you set it up. We take care of automating this process, but in essence, what we're doing is we're setting the permissions on that organization in order to make sure that students, for example, can't see any like private solution repositories or other students' repositories in the organization. We take care of setting all of those permissions, and we also take care of setting up some of the state that we need to keep track of all of your classrooms, all of your assignments, all of your auto grading checks and scores and so forth. And so all of that gets configured during this initial setup stage. So once you've set up your GitHub organization to use with Classroom 50, from there, you'll be able to add a classroom to your organization. Again, you can have as many classrooms as you like inside of your GitHub organization. And when you create a classroom, you'll be prompted to enter a name for the classroom, a unique identifier or slug for the classroom that will end up appearing in URLs that I'll show you in a moment, where you'll share a URL with students so that they can accept an assignment. And then you can specify what term, like fall or spring or what year you happen to be teaching for that particular classroom. Within each classroom, you can manage your roster of students. This is implemented ultimately as just a CSV file stored inside of your organization, but you can invite students by their GitHub username or upload a CSV of GitHub usernames to invite them all in bulk. And when students are invited to join your classroom, they'll be invited to join your GitHub organization. And that's what's going to allow students to create repositories in your organization for their assignments that they're accepting. And that's what will allow them to be part of this classroom. And so the roster will let you take care of inviting students to your GitHub organization. And once you've set up your roster, then you could also create an assignment. And so each classroom can have as many assignments as you like. In this case, you're seeing that you can give the assignment a name, describe what the assignment is about, and then specify a template repository for that assignment. The template repository will essentially serve as the starter code for the assignment, so that when a student accepts the assignment for the first time, they'll be given a new GitHub repository, and that new GitHub repository will be populated with the contents of that template repository. So whatever's there, that's what students are going to start with. You have the option of making it either an individual assignment or a group project. If it's a group project, you can specify the maximum number of students that you'd like to be part of that assignment. And then from there, oh, and this, by the way, is what the starter code then might look like. So I can just create a repository in my organization where that repository contains the starter code that I would like students to use. And so once I've created that template repository, I can take that template repository, tell Classroom 50 about it, and then Classroom 50 can use this as the starter code for students. In addition to specifying starter code, Classroom 50 will also then allow you to configure tests. These are optional. If you want to just use Classroom 50 to distribute assignments and then collect them, you don't need to configure auto-grading tests. But certainly if you would like to, if you want anything to run automatically every time students push their code so that you can automatically evaluate them on a set of unit tests, you do have the ability to configure tests here. Each test can have an optional setup step. For example, if students are writing code in a compiled language, maybe you're going to try to compile their code first before you run it. Some command that you run, and then if you'd like, you can optionally provide input via standard input, and then specify what the output is going to be. And you have a few different options for how you want to configure that output. You can do a very strict comparison where you look for an exact match with the output. You can look for making sure that the output is just like somewhere in the student's response. If you're feeling more comfortable, you can set up regular expressions to look for particular patterns in student responses as well. So you have a number of options for what these individual tests then can look like. And so you could set up different tests, different auto-grading tests for what students are going to be evaluated on when they submit. And the way that will work is that every time students push their code to their repository, that will kick off a GitHub Actions workflow that takes care of going through, fetching all of these tests from your Classroom 50 configuration and running all of them. And in a moment later, Rongshin is going to go into a little bit more detail as to what that looks like and how the auto-grading really works. Once you set up your assignments then, you'll be presented with a page that looks like this. In this case, I have just one assignment, but eventually as I add more assignments, you'll see a list of all of them here, where you can manage all the different assignments that you have as part of your classroom, see how many students have submitted them, and then clicking on any one of those assignments will take you to a detailed view for that assignment. And most importantly, at the top of this view is a link that you can then share with students that are in your class. So if you share this link with students in your class, then when students click on that link, they'll be able to accept that assignment. And what it means to accept the assignment is that a new repository will be created for that student with the contents of your starter code, with a little bit of GitHub Actions workflow code in place there to help make sure that student code gets auto-graded after it's submitted. So here then is what students will see when they go to accept an assignment. When they visit that URL that you were provided with in the previous window, students will see a screen like this where they're offered the option to accept the assignment, which will use GitHub's API to create a new repository with that starter code so that they can then get started with that assignment. And so here's what that looks like. Here's a student repository that's been created by Classroom 50. It's automatically populated with a little bit of configuration just so that Classroom 50 can identify what assignment it came from so we can configure some of the workflows around it. And then it's pre-configured with that default starter code that you specified in your template repository. And then students can interact with this just like they could any other GitHub repository. They can clone it if they want to use it with code spaces, they can do that. And then when they're done with their assignment, they have options for how to submit that assignment. They can submit it via Git commands if they're comfortable with Git, just by running a Git push to submit students some completed work to this GitHub repository. If you rather students not use the command line, they could upload files directly to GitHub's web interface. And we also have our own Classroom 50 command line command that will do much the same thing, wrapping up some of those similar ideas. I see a message in the chat. The architecture feels very similar to how GitHub Classroom worked. And indeed, GitHub Classroom was a big source of our inspiration for the design of all of this. So we were really looking at GitHub Classroom, thinking about what worked well then for students and teachers, and figuring out how do we replicate that in this environment. The biggest difference between GitHub Classroom and Classroom 50 itself is that Classroom 50 is entirely serverless. That while GitHub Classroom did have its own server and database for keeping track of things, Classroom 50 is entirely GitHub based. So all the data is here. We don't have our own servers for keeping track of any student data or student state. We don't have access to any of that. So what happens after students push their code? I've mentioned this idea of auto-grading as part of what happens after students have pushed their code. But what really this looks like is that after students push their code to this repository, that kicks off a workflow run of using GitHub Actions. And GitHub Actions will pull in the student's code. It will pull in the latest version of your auto-grading checks that you've configured inside of Classroom 50. We'll run each of those checks, and you can specify when you configure the test, like how many points is each check worth if you want to weight each of them differently. And then that will be aggregated together into a final result for that student. And when that result is done, we use GitHub releases as a way of indicating that this is a student submission that we have now graded, and the release includes all of the information about that submission. And so in Markdown here, you're seeing a release where we're showing a table indicating the results of that submission. And if you look at the assets that are attached to it, there's also a machine readable version if you need to be able to parse out that data in a little bit more detail. In GitHub Classroom assignments, there was a way to mark certain files as uneditable. Is that available here too? Students have like total write access to the repository. So in theory, they could edit anything. But you and your auto-grading checks could certainly do things like check to see if students had made modifications to a file such that it was like different from a source file, for example. So things like that might be possible as well. Can students use GitHub Desktop to push to the repository? Yeah, it's a repository that students have write access to. So anything that students are using to push to a repository should work, whether that's GitHub Desktop or some other graphical interface that sits atop Git. If students are using an IDE that has a Git integration, for example, that should work as well. Is there a way to make a collection of assignments as a course and then duplicate them for a new section? That's something we're definitely exploring. That hasn't been built yet, but it's something we're thinking about. In the meantime, though, even though we haven't built it yet, because in terms of how this is implemented, which we'll get to in just a moment, every course, so to speak, is really just a folder that exists in a GitHub repository that you, the teacher, control. And so because it's just a folder, you can, for example, duplicate that folder to create a new course for a new year and then push that to your configuration repository. So things like that are totally possible because all of the state is just backed by a GitHub repository. Even if our user interface doesn't offer the particular automations you're looking for, you can make those changes manually if you'd like. But certainly if they're common workflows like migration, those are things we're thinking about too. And we're exploring ways of trying to make that easy and trying to build as much as we can into the web interface and into the CLI. There's a question about can we deny admin and settings? Students need to be able to, students are the ones who are creating the repository. So it is their repository, which they'll need to be able to do things like add collaborators to the repository in the case of a group assignment. But only you, the teacher, are an owner of the organization. Students are members of the organization, but not owners of the organization. And so that's how we implement this permissions model where students can only see the repositories that they themselves have created or that they have been given access to, and they can't see other repositories that are in the organization. All right. We'll go back to the Classroom 50 page just to show you a little bit more about what this looks like after some students have submitted. After students have submitted, you'll be able to see a table of student submissions, what score they received from the autograder, and then there are links that can take you to a page where you can comment on the student submission or where you can just view the students commit if you want to see what it is that they changed. And of course, because these are Git repositories that students are pushing to, if you want to go back and look at the history of student commits as well, that's something that you have access to too. And if you want to export this data, you can download all of those scores as a CSV file as well. So that then was a brief look at the web interface. Hopefully that gives you a sense for the kinds of features that we're implementing as part of Classroom 50. And as a few of you noted, yes, it's very much inspired by the design of GitHub Classroom. We're trying to make it so that if you're a user of GitHub Classroom and you liked that tooling and that technology, that we're trying to replicate a similar experience here that's very GitHub-based, that's very repository-based, so that you can distribute assignments and collect them and have them automatically graded as well. So in addition to this web interface, we also offer a command line interface. And this command line interface comes in the form of extensions to the GH command line command for working with GitHub. So we've implemented an extension called GH Teacher that includes all of the teacher-facing Classroom 50 commands. And there's a separate one for GH Student that I'll talk about in a moment. But within GH Teacher, you have access to basically everything I just showed you in the web interface, but now just in the command line. So if you prefer the command line or you want to be able to script something or automate something, you'll have access to this CLI as well. So you can do things like add an assignment, configure auto grading tests, all from the terminal too. And then from the student perspective, while students don't have to use the CLI, if they would like to, in order to do things like accept an assignment from the CLI, that's an option too. So if you would rather students not visit a URL to accept an assignment, you could give them a command that they could paste into their terminal. And when they run that command, it will take care of the process of accepting the assignment for them. And so these same features then exist in the CLI too. There's a question, to use the CLI, will we need to have GitHub CLI installed? And yes, these CLI commands are built as extensions on top of GitHub CLI. So GitHub CLI is a prerequisite to being able to use these teacher and student-facing extensions on top of it. So in terms of how this works, I've alluded to this a little bit, but just to give you a sense of like, where is all this information getting stored? How is this working behind the scenes? Again, because Classroom 50 is entirely serverless, everything Classroom 50 does is just using some native GitHub feature. So we use GitHub organizations for organizing all of the submissions. Every template repository, every student repository, all of the state gets stored inside of this GitHub organization. We use GitHub repositories for storing classroom state. So just as you'll have a repository for every template and every student will get a repository every time they accept an assignment, there's also an additional repository that just stores all of your specific teacher state for this organization. So things like, what are all of your classrooms and what are all of your assignments? What are all the auto grading checks? What are the scores that students received on individual assignments? All of that gets stored in a GitHub repository too. And then we use GitHub Pages for publishing this assignment data. And so within your GitHub repository, we'll use GitHub Pages to publish anything that students need to know about. Students never need to visit this GitHub Pages site. It's entirely something that happens behind the scenes as a way so that the command line interface and the web interface knows what assignments can be accepted and when the deadlines are and what the auto grading checks to run are. But just so you know, that's what's going on behind the scenes. As I've mentioned a couple times, we do use GitHub Actions for taking care of auto grading. So every time students push to their repository, GitHub Actions is responsible for doing that auto grading. And then we also run a GitHub Action to collect those scores together, just to make it more efficient for you then to be able to review and get access to those scores later, rather than have to visit each student's repository individually. And then we use GitHub Releases, as I showed you a little bit ago, for providing auto grading results and feedback. So every time we run the auto grader, we create a new GitHub release, and that release includes all of the information about how well the student did based on the results of the auto grader, and also providing you with a way to leave feedback on that particular submission too. So that then is what we've been working on in terms of Classroom 50. It's currently in development, but if you'd like to try it while it's in development, you're certainly welcome to. There was a link shared to the GitHub repository, and someone else maybe on our team can share the link in the chat again if you'd like to take a look at it, if you'd like to try out the CLI or the web interface. I will note that some things still might change between now and July 1st. So on July 1st, you might need to reset up your organization just to make sure you're getting the latest version of the tooling that we're building. But if you'd like to try it, at least between now and July 1st, to provide feedback, to ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that. But July 1st is when we expect it to be generally available to everyone. And we'll certainly take more questions, but what I'd like to do now is turn things over to Rongshin, who's going to give you a little bit more of a technical deep dive in terms of how it is that this architecture works, so that if you're curious about getting into the details, if you're interested in trying to customize it or do something that's specifically tailored to your needs, it'll be helpful to have an understanding of what's really going on behind the scenes in Classroom 50. So Rongshin, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Rongshin, and thanks, Brian, for the introduction to Classroom 50 in general. So for the remaining time, just gonna quickly give you all like a quick technical deep dive to the architecture of Classroom 50. It's a rather sophisticated and complex because it involves no servers, no database, and just GitHub. So at a high level, what Classroom 50 is built, there are four moving parts for Classroom 50. So first, there's a config repo, which is Brian already give you an introduction. So each organization, when you initialize through Classroom 50, you will get a Classroom 50 config repo. And this is the repo where it holds all the states that represent the entire Classroom 50 org. You could have multiple classes defined in this config repo. And we also use GitHub Pages, where Brian also mentioned. So all these assignment definition, specification, auto grader, it will get published through GitHub Pages so that the downstream auto grader can consume. So when students accept the assignment and when students submit the assignment, which will trigger a auto grading process, that auto grader will actually go visit the GitHub Pages URL and retrieve the correct auto grader for that particular assignment. This is actually a benefit that because in the traditional classroom, GitHub Classroom setup, right, when you have changes to the auto grader for a particular assignment, once the student accepts the assignment, it's really hard to update on the student side, but with this approach, everything is centralized in the config repo. So if you have changes to the autograder, the next time the students submit the assignment, they will actually get the latest autograder executed and to run on the assignment. And on the student side of things, it's really simple. We try to keep things as simple as possible. When a student accepts the assignment, they will get the distribution code defined in your template repository. And we just inject the autograder to it. This is a very simple GitHub workflow that its job is just to pull the actual autograder from the config repo, if you will. We call it a harness. So that's why the student repo doesn't have any autograding logic in it. All its jobs is trying to get the latest autograder and run that autograder. So this is just an overview, right? This diagram basically captures what Classroom 50 has been utilizing. And again, it's all GitHub technology underneath the hood. There's nothing fancy here. We can go to the next one. And just to take a closer look at what this config repo looks like. So as you can see, this is under the org, under the repository called Classroom 50. So within this config repo, you will have a GitHub repository, a .github repository, which hosts all the workflows and the scripts. And again, Classroom 50, we give you some starter workflow and script to use. You don't have to touch any of this file at all in most of the cases. But at the end of the day, this is just a repo we bootstrap for you. You have total control over this repo. So if the workflow doesn't work quite well for your use case, you are welcome to make any changes to all the file in this config repo. And as you can see, there's one class get created here. It's called CS1 for 2026. So within each classroom folder, it holds the state corresponding to that classroom. So for example, in this classroom, we have a classroom.json, which is really the metadata that describe this classroom. Most importantly, it has assignments.json, which is really important. This JSON file basically holds all the metadata for all the assignment you're going to author in this class. It will define the autograder. It will define all the tests you wish to run for a particular assignment and what the runtime environment you want it to run. You want the autograder to run on. There's also a raster file. We call it students CSV, which just hold the student's GitHub username. And there's a source.json file. This is the file which, at the end of the day, most teacher will also care is the auto-grading result. So with this file basically hold all the submission history and its auto-grading result, so that you can process this JSON file however you want. But we also provide GUI to visualize this data. But at the end of the day, this is just a JSON file, and you're also welcome to visualize it however you want. And there's a folder called autograders as well. This is where you could define your own autograder for each assignment. And again, our GUI just provide one way for you to write your own checks so that you don't need to bother actually going into the file and modify the JSON file yourself. But again, since this is fully customizable, so you can write whatever autograder you want and put it in this folder. And I will talk about the order of autograder in the next few slides. So just take a closer look at what this assignments.json file look like. This is just a very simple snippet of the assignments.json file. As you can see, there's an assignment called greetings, and it is using the template from the CS for 2026 /greet template repo. So you can point to any other public template repository, which is possible, but normally to keep things tidy, you will want your template repository to live in your own org. You can see that we can specify a runtime. Right now, you can just use Python 3.12, but we could also change to use container, where you can specify the Docker image you want to use, and you can even specify a few other attributes, such as what kind of a user you want to run when instantiating that container. You can run as a root, or as a Ubuntu user, or whatever user, right? So it's also customizable. And here comes the test part. There's a test field where you would define your test. And again, Classroom 50 comes with a pre-written framework, if you will. You could define the test here, or through the GUI actually. So when you author your own test through the GUI, this is actually what get written to the assignments.json. Right now, we have simple input-output test. We have run command tests. We also have PyTest supported, which is trying to align with the traditional GitHub Classroom behavior, auto-grading behavior. But again, this is fully customizable. So you could also write your own auto-grader and don't use any of these pre-written test frameworks. Any questions so far? Okay, you can move on to the next one, and then we can answer more questions in the Q&A. So now let's look at the student assignment repo. On the student side, things are quite simple. You will have the starter code from the template repository, and there's a one workflow file. We call it autograde.yaml, but it doesn't really do any, it doesn't actually host any auto-grading logic. All it does is to pull the actual runner from the config repo, as I mentioned earlier. So it's quite simple. And that's why it doesn't matter how the students submit their code, as long as they push changes to the assignment repository, this action workflow will get triggered. And it will just pull the latest runner and run it. Yeah, next slide, please. And this is just to summarize what a typical submission flow works. So student work on their assignment repository, they make file changes, they're happy with the changes, they will just submit. They could use our command line tool, gh student submit, to submit the assignment, or if more comfortable, they could also do regular git command, just git commit and git push. Once they get pushed to the assignment repository, it triggers the auto-grader workflow. What the auto-grader workflow is actually doing is it fetch the auto-grader from the GitHub pages that get published through the config repo. There's a harness. It will basically read, okay, this is which assignment, then it will decide which auto-grader should it use, and then you run the auto-grader. And at the end of the day, it will just generate a result.json file and put that back to the student's assignment repository release. And the student can also see the auto-grading result there. And in short, all we are doing here at the end of the day is trying to generate this result.json file. So as long as your auto-grader generate the result.json file that you know how to parse, or our GUI know how to parse, that's also fine. You don't have to use our solution here. And here is just a quick summary on the order of auto-grader being run. So if you want to have an assignment-specific auto-grader that override all the other auto-grader, you would just put it in the auto-graders folder and put it under the slug, which is greet, the assignment, the example assignment, which is called greet. So the slug is greet, and then you put the autograder.py file there. If you write the checks through our GUI, what our GUI is actually do is generating this test.json file that our harness will understand. So if we see there's a test.json file exists and you don't have an autograder.py specified, then you will be using our autograding framework. If you don't want to handwrite every single autograder, because I know some teachers have a master autograder, if you will, and it really depends on what assignment it is grading on, it will automatically switch to the correct autograding branch. Then you could have a master, if you will, autograder in a classroom level, so that all the assignment will be using the same autograder. And because each assignment has its own metadata, you can fully utilize the metadata, to do conditional autograding. And if you don't have any of this, by default, we will just have a confirmation on the student release side saying, hey, the student submitted the assignment, and that's it. There's no autograder being executed. And just to give you a quick preview of what it looks like. So on the student side, they will see this simple table. And again, this is fully customizable. This is just as of today, this is what the design looks like. But you will also notice there's a result.json, and that's actually what the collect workflow will use to aggregate, collect all the auto-grading result into the scores.json file. And certainly you can customize how you want to present the auto-grader result. I think I saw some of the question asked how many things you can put on this release. I think it's the limit of GitHub. If GitHub allow you to put tens of thousands of lines of result in this GitHub release page, you're welcome to do that. But this is just one way to present the auto-grading result to a student. And next slide, please. Yeah, and when it comes to collect scores, by default, we give you a daily cron job autograder daily cron job collect score workflow. So it will run nightly and just basically go through all the student assignment repo, gather the result.json file and put it in the scores.json file. Or you can run it on demand as well. And you can certainly tweak the frequency of how often this collect score workflow runs. And again, like I said, once you get this scores.json file, right, you can have your own visualization to visualize the result or use our GUI. Our GUI have a built-in visualize. Our GUI will already like visualize the summation result for you as well. So to recap, the design here is, at the end of the day, one repo hold all the classroom state. The workflow is actually the compute, even though we claim it's serverless, but what it means is we don't depending on any third-party server rather than the GitHub workflow. And all the grade trace to a particular commit because each submit is a commit, and that commit tied to a release and the result.json file. So I think that's basically it on the architecture design and overview. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks, Rongxin. So hopefully that was sort of a helpful look at what Classroom 50 is all about, and then a little bit in terms of how it works. With our remaining time, we thought we'd take maybe at least 15 minutes or more if there are more questions, just to see what questions you have. What are you wondering? What can we help answer for you about this tooling and how it works? If you have requests for features you'd like to see, certainly we'd love to hear that too. Certainly this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. We have a discussion forum on our GitHub repository where some teachers have been asking questions and having discussions already, and you're more than welcome to contribute to that. But we'll take some time now for any questions you have right here. And I'll invite my other presenters from our team to join and answer questions too as we see them.
Just to name one for the chat for us as a group, someone asked, you mentioned I can provide inline feedback to submissions through GitHub releases. How does it work without PRs?
Rongxin, do you want to talk about how that works?
Yes, right now we have a review URL. So on the GUI side, if you click on the review URL, you will get the full diff and do inline comment there. Although we could certainly add support of automatically, open API whenever students submit. So that's possible. Which are the questions? So I start from.
There's a question about, in a data science course, could you push a Jupyter notebook to GitHub and then use Classroom 50? And the answer is it should be yes, that as long anything you can push to a GitHub repository, Classroom 50 will be able to work with. And so that seems reasonable to me.
Yeah. Clarify.
I think a similar answer to the question about whether you can use GitHub Pages, like using Pages as a way to deliver material to students, that too should be fine and independent of Classroom 50.
I guess I could take the latest question on the privilege, like student privilege. So each student by the current design is added as a member. So they are not owner or whatnot. And for the assignment repo they created, though, they are a maintainer at least. So even though it's admin, that's fine, because we want them to have the privilege or permission to also invite their collaborator in the future for the group assignment.
There's a question, could we describe a brief start to finish overview of how you would use Classroom 50 from beginning of semester to end? So the first thing you would want to do is import your Classroom roster. Well, actually, first thing you would do is within Classroom 50, either by going to the Classroom 50 website or by using the CLI, you would set up your GitHub organization with Classroom 50. So you'll click the button on the website, that will set up the organization, set up all of the state there. From there, you'll create a classroom in your organization. Within that classroom, you'll want to import all of your students into that classroom. You can do that by uploading a CSV of all the student GitHub usernames. At the moment, we don't have built-in integrations for things like Canvas, but because there's a command line tool and an upload feature, as long as you can get a CSV export out of Canvas, you can use that. And then from there, you'll create the assignments that you want to distribute to your students. Optionally, if you want to, you can give them starter code. Optionally, if you want to, you can configure auto-grading tests. And then for each of those assignments, you'll be given a link that you can share with students that lets them accept the assignment and work in it.
I guess I can answer the inline feedback. So there's a question asked how to show students to see the inline feedback without using the GUI. So the inline feedback is a GitHub feature anyway. So if you send a link to the student will just see the inline feedback through GitHub's UI, not through our UI. Okay. GitHub UI.
Question I'm not sure we answered. Can a student invite collaborators to any of their assignment repositories or only for group projects?
If they invite students through our tooling, so using Classroom 50, we will check the limits on like whether it's an individual or group project and how many collaborators there are.